Have you ever considered that death doesn't always arrive with a loud knock, but that the body might have been whispering its warnings long before? Eleanor was 79, a retired elementary school teacher living alone in Ohio. Every morning she made her coffee, read the newspaper, and tended to her little pots of flowers on the porch. To anyone looking in, everything seemed fine. But then, one morning, she called her daughter and asked, "What day is it today?" It sounded like a harmless question, but it turned out to be the first sign in a silent chain of changes no one noticed, until it was too late. 2 months later, Eleanor was gone. In America, the deepest pain of aging isn't always illness, it's the delay. It's realizing you're slipping and no one sees it. It's when your children don't know what to do, and all that's left are the words, "if only." Have you ever asked yourself, if your loved one suddenly starts eating less, speaking less, or simply breathing differently, would you notice? This video is here to help make sure you never have to say, "if only" again. Because in the final minutes, I'll reveal something most families never get the chance to learn until it's far too late. And if you're over 60 or caring for someone who is, the next 10 minutes could change the way you see life and how you prepare for it. Welcome to Golden Wise Elders, a place where we don't just give advice, but truly listen, share, and walk alongside one another. Here, every conversation is a chance to make the later years of life more meaningful, more peaceful, and more deeply connected. Today, I want to take you through 7 quiet signs, subtle whispers from the body that we often overlook. But they might be telling us that someone we love is nearing the final stage of life. It might sound heavy, I know, but the truth is this: the more we understand, the better we can prepare. For ourselves, for our loved ones, and for those final precious moments that truly matter. Sign 1. Subtle but persistent breathing difficulties. Have you ever noticed that just walking across the room, or even changing your bed sheets, leaves you breathless? Short, shallow breaths, feeling winded without exerting yourself. Many people brush it off thinking, "I'm just getting older, that's normal." But what if it's not just age? What if it's your heart or lungs quietly waving a red flag? I remember Ruth, 82 years old, living in Tampa, Florida. She once told her daughter she felt out of breath every time she bent down to pick something up. They thought she was just tired, maybe not moving enough. Then one morning, while making tea, she had a sudden shortness of breath. She was rushed to the hospital, and that's when doctors discovered she'd been living with mild heart failure for months, without anyone realizing it. According to Dr. Norman Levy, a geriatric specialist at UCLA, if shortness of breath happens even at rest, when you're just sitting or lying down, that's not normal aging. It could be a warning sign of heart failure, fluid around the lungs, or chronic low oxygen levels. Breathing is the rhythm of life. When it falters, everything else follows. It can disrupt your sleep, cloud your thinking, and make you feel foggy, tired, or off balance. And the scariest part? You might not feel pain, just a slow creeping fatigue you can't explain. That's your body speaking. If we ignore it, the consequences often come without warning. But breathing isn't the only subtle sign. Sometimes even changes in how we eat can reveal truths we never expected. Have you or someone you love noticed more frequent shortness of breath lately? Type yes in the comments if that sounds familiar. And if this message feels helpful to you, give it a like. And don't forget to subscribe, because we have so many more stories and insights to share together. Some changes in the body don't arrive with loud alarms. They show up quietly, like a pair of pants suddenly feeling loose, or a belt needing to be tightened by another notch. Have you ever looked at a loved one and felt a jolt of worry? Dad looks so much thinner than before. But then we brush it off. He's probably just not eating well lately. Until the truth catches us completely off guard. I once spoke with Richard, 76, from Portland, Oregon. His daughter told me that lately, he'd been skipping meals, barely touching his food, even his favorites. "I'm not hungry," he would say. It wasn't until he lost nearly 15 pounds in under 2 months that they finally took him to the doctor. The diagnosis? Nerve damage affecting his digestive system, dulling his brain's ability to sense hunger, a surprisingly common, yet often overlooked issue in older adults. According to the Johns Hopkins Institute for Aging, after age 70, weight should be monitored regularly, ideally every 2 weeks. Unexplained weight loss can be linked to muscle wasting, metabolic disorders, or early signs of serious conditions like immune decline, cancer, or absorption issues. When we're younger, losing a few pounds can be seen as a good thing. But at this stage of life, every gram lost might mean a drop in strength, alertness, or life force itself. Eating isn't just about nourishment, it's about joy. It's a way of saying, "I'm still here, I'm still alive." And sadly, many mistake appetite loss as just a part of aging, when in fact, it could be the body's quiet cry for help. We can't control everything, but we can choose to listen earlier so we're not left with regrets later. And sometimes the real change isn't in what they eat, but in how they show up in life. Because memory and emotion too can begin to fade, long before we realize they're slipping away. There's a quiet fear that many families face but rarely talk about. The moment when someone you love forgets the name of their own grandchild. At first, you think they're just tired, or maybe it's just normal aging. But then the repeated questions, the confusion about dates, the struggle to recall familiar names start piling up. And suddenly, you realize the person you've always known is beginning to slip away. I remember Mary, a retired Latin professor from San Diego. Sharp, witty, full of life. Her daughter told me that in just 3 months, her mother began asking, "What day is it?" 5 times in one morning. One day she stood motionless in her own kitchen, holding a frying pan, completely unable to remember why she was there. Soon after, she no longer recognized that kitchen as her own. Many assume this is early Alzheimer's, but here's the truth. Alzheimer's often progresses slowly over years. When memory and awareness begin to fade rapidly and unpredictably, it's more likely linked to oxygen deprivation in the brain, often caused by underlying heart issues, blood clots, or silent mini-strokes that go unnoticed. According to experts at the Mayo Clinic, one of the hidden causes of sudden cognitive decline in seniors is impaired brain circulation. When the brain isn't receiving enough blood or oxygen, even basic functions begin to falter. Memory slips away, orientation is lost, conversation becomes harder, and people begin to retreat into silence. But perhaps the most heartbreaking part isn't that they forget. It's that we still see them, sitting right in front of us, and yet it feels like they've already drifted somewhere else. Still, you should know this. They need us. Even if they can't remember your name, they can still feel the warmth in your hand. A gentle voice, a familiar glance, those things can still reach the deepest part of them. Where memory fails, love endures. And in that quiet unraveling of the mind, the body often begins to speak as well, through other signs we might overlook. Because at this stage of life, even the smallest scratch can mean more than we think. So let's move forward to the next subtle signal, the wounds that don't heal, and the infections that linger. There are wounds that don't come from major accidents, but from something as small as a scratch on the tip of a finger. Yet in old age, it's often these seemingly tiny things that can quietly push the body into danger, without us even realizing it. I still remember the story of Mr. Daniel, 81 years old, living in Austin, Texas. One morning, he was trimming his nails and accidentally scratched his index finger. It was a small cut, barely any blood, nothing anyone would worry about. But a few days later, the skin around it turned red and swollen. Then came a mild fever. He was rushed to the hospital, diagnosed with sepsis, all from a cut that seemed so harmless. This isn't rare. As we age, our immune system weakens and the body's ability to heal slows down. According to doctors at Mayo Clinic, if a minor wound, even a nail scratch or tiny cut, doesn't heal after 10 days, it could signal serious issues with liver, kidney, or blood circulation. The further the injury is from the heart, like in the hands or feet, the less blood flow it gets, making infection more likely and recovery harder. Many older adults keep a habit of suffering in silence. They don't complain. They don't tell their children. They don't want to be a burden. But this silence often means missing the best window for treatment. And once the infection spreads, treatment becomes far more difficult, especially for those with chronic conditions like diabetes, high blood pressure, or heart disease. I understand. No one wants to be seen as weak, but speaking up when something feels off isn't weakness. It's strength. It's how we protect ourselves and the people who love us. Whether you live with family or alone, every scratch, every cut, no matter how small, deserves attention. Because when it comes to health, there's no such thing as just a scratch. And as Mr. Daniel said after he recovered, I never thought the thing that nearly killed me would be a nail clipper. Sometimes, it's the smallest things that remind us. Our bodies are tired too, and they need to be heard. And you know what? Changes in our bodies don't always show up as wounds. Sometimes they appear as a deep, lingering fatigue, even when you've done nothing strenuous. So let's keep going. Let's talk about another quiet sign that's just as easy to overlook. The kind of exhaustion no good night's sleep can fix. There are changes in a loved one's gaze that can hurt more than words, like when they sit in the same room with you, quiet, withdrawn, staring out the window, not out of anger or sadness, but as if they're listening to something far away, something only they can hear. Many assume this kind of silence is just boredom or the result of too much time alone. But sometimes the truth goes deeper. In certain stages of life, the mind begins to retreat, not out of fear or depression, but as a quiet, instinctive way to prepare for departure. I remember sitting with Linda, 84, in Charlotte, North Carolina. She used to be the life of every family gathering, always telling stories and making everyone laugh. But lately, her daughter told me she'd stopped engaging. No longer excited when her grandchildren visited, barely smiling, barely speaking. She'd spend hours simply gazing outside, and yet the love for her family hadn't disappeared. It had just softened, gone inward. According to psychiatrist Dr. Julie Trent, people nearing the end of life often seek stillness. They haven't stopped loving you, she says. They simply don't have the emotional energy to express it the way they used to. They need quiet, not to shut you out, but to begin making peace with their own journey. Emotions take energy, and when energy fades, even love begins to whisper instead of shout. Sometimes it looks like a quiet smile. Other times, it's the gentle squeeze of your hand when you sit beside them in silence. So if someone you care about has become quieter, more withdrawn, don't assume it's sadness or anger. Just sit with them. Hold their hand, because sometimes silent presence is the deepest form of love. And as emotions gently pull back, the body too begins to send its final signals. The breath changes. The heartbeat slows. In the next part, we'll look at how the body says goodbye, softly but unmistakably. Sign 7. Irregular heartbeat and poor circulation in hands and feet. There are chills that don't come from the weather. They come from something far more personal, from the hand of someone you love. That moment when you gently hold your mother's hand while she sleeps and realize it's so cold, it takes your breath away. I still remember the last time Mr. Walter, 86 years old, living in Kansas City, held his son's hand. They didn't say much, but his son later told me that what he remembers most wasn't what was said. It was the feel of his father's skin that day. Cold, thin, and pale, like it was fading into the air. Just a few days later, his father passed away. In our later years, changes in circulation are easy to overlook. Cold hands and feet, fingertips turning bluish or gray. People often blame it on air conditioning or poor blood flow from sitting too long. But according to geriatric specialists, these are clear signs of the final stage of life, when the body begins redirecting blood away from the extremities, conserving every drop to keep vital organs like the heart and brain alive for just a little longer. That quiet retreat of the body doesn't bring pain, but it does speak volumes. It's the body's gentle, instinctive way of embracing each final beat, each final breath, and during this time, small changes, shortness of breath, and irregular heartbeat, the loss of warmth in a hand, are often the body's most honest goodbyes, delivered softly, slowly, and with profound grace. If you've lived through that moment, if you've held your mother's trembling, cold hand while she slept, you know how deeply that memory stays with you. Leave a heart in the comments if that moment has ever haunted you. Let's remember together. Let's heal together, because in the end, what stays in our hearts isn't the goodbye. It's the squeeze of a hand, the glance of a familiar eye, the heartbeat we caught just in time to cherish. And you know that's why this video exists, to help you recognize these signs early so that your family isn't caught off guard. Not to create fear, but to offer you the power of preparation, through love, not panic, through understanding, not helplessness. Sign 8, a reverse sleep-wake cycle. When night feels like day, and day becomes a blur. One of the most overlooked signs that something deeper might be happening is a quiet shift in the body's clock. You may notice your loved one waking up in the middle of the night without reason, sleeping excessively during the day, or even becoming unusually alert during odd hours. I remember speaking with John from Arizona. He told me about his mother, Helen, 87 years old, who had recently developed a new habit. She would wake up at 2 a.m., make herself a cup of tea, and sit quietly on the porch until sunrise. She says her mind feels clearest at that hour, John shared. But during the day, she seemed drained, disoriented, and uninterested in even the simplest tasks. According to experts from the American Institute of Geriatric Medicine, disruptions in the body's circadian rhythm are a common yet subtle indicator during the pre-terminal stage. It's as if the body begins to reverse its rhythm, an unconscious attempt to align with deeper internal shifts that words cannot explain. This reversal doesn't just disturb sleep, it also chips away at energy levels, weakens concentration, and heightens the risk of falls and confusion, especially when day and night blur into one another. So if you've noticed an unusual change in your loved one's sleep schedule, don't dismiss it. The body has its own language, and sometimes the night speaks louder than the day. Have you ever witnessed something like this in someone you love? If it resonates with you, type the word sleep in the comments. Let's share, learn, and support one another, because no one should have to decode these signs alone. Sign 9. Heightened sensitivity to sound and light when the world feels too loud. There was a time when Evelyn, a retired school teacher in Seattle, would light up at the sound of classical music filling the living room. Every Sunday, she'd sit with her grandchildren, humming softly to Vivaldi or Chopin. But lately, something shifted. Now she asked to turn the music off. She wants the curtains drawn. She complains that the lights are too bright, the voice is too loud. At first, her family thought she was just becoming more particular with age, but what they didn't realize is that this isn't about preferences. It's about her brain quietly changing. According to the American Geriatric Society, as the body begins to decline, the nervous system may start to pull back as well. Sensory processing, our ability to handle light, noise, and touch, becomes overloaded. What once brought joy now feels overwhelming. A favorite melody becomes noise. A sunny room becomes too much. This is not a change in personality, it's a change in perception. This shift often leads older adults to withdraw, not because they've lost interest, but because the world around them has grown too sharp, too intense, too exhausting to bear. They're not trying to avoid you. They're trying to protect themselves from overstimulation their bodies can no longer regulate. In these moments, what they need most isn't correction. It's comfort, a gentle voice, a dimmed light, a quieter presence. So if someone you love seems to flinch at sound or close their eyes to the light, pause before assuming they're just being difficult. Their world is changing. Let your care change with it. Sign 10. The quiet urge to put things in order. A subtle, loving goodbye. One morning, Emily walked into her father's study and found something that stopped her in her tracks. Her dad, Mark, 91 years old, was carefully sorting through old documents, labeling photo albums, and placing a handwritten letter on the desk. On the envelope, it read, "For you, when you're ready to understand." He didn't say much, just looked up, smiled, and whispered, "It makes me feel at peace." According to geriatric psychologists, this gentle act of putting things in order, whether it's organizing paperwork, rewriting a will, recalling old memories, or offering final pieces of advice, isn't simply nostalgia. It's a deeply emotional process, a quiet signal that the spirit is preparing, not with fear, but with intention, with love. This isn't about giving up. It's about giving back, about leaving clarity, not confusion, about ensuring that what truly matters, values, stories, lessons, aren't lost, but passed on. When someone begins tidying their past, they're not just organizing items. They're handing you pieces of who they were, hoping you'll hold them gently. So instead of worrying, sit beside them. Let them tell you the story behind that old photo. Listen to the pauses between their words, because these are more than memories. They're legacy, their trust. They're the soul's way of saying, "I was here, and I hope you remember me well." Have you ever heard a story that seemed random at the time, but later revealed itself as a hidden message? If so, type the word memory in the comments. Let's honor those quiet moments and the people who gave them to us. Because in the end, it's not the stuff they leave behind. It's the love they've tried to wrap in every small gesture, just waiting for you to open. There's one simple thing we all long for as we age, not to be forgotten, to be seen, to be heard, especially when our bodies begin to change, quietly, gradually, but with meaning that runs deep. Recognizing the silent signs the body gives in its final year isn't about fear. It's about awareness. It's about standing in a sacred space where you have the chance to love better, care more intentionally, and not miss the moments you'll one day wish you could relive. This video isn't meant to make you sad. It's meant to wake something up inside you. To remind you that sometimes it's not about adding more time to life, but about adding more life to the time that remains. If you've made it this far, it means you carry a heart that cares, and that's exactly the kind of soul this channel, Golden Wise Elders, is made for. So if this video moved you, please hit like. If it made you think of someone, share it. And don't forget to subscribe and tap the bell icon so you won't miss any of the stories, tools, and reflections we bring straight to your screen. You are not alone in this journey, and we want to walk it with you. Before you go, take a moment to leave a comment below. What part of today's video touched you most? And tell us, who will you call after this? just to check in, just to say you care. I read every single comment because this isn't just a channel, it's a community, a home for those who are caring, aging, grieving, learning, and loving with more intention each day. So slow down, love deeply, make each moment count. I'll see you in the next video where we continue this journey together, one meaningful story at a time.